Welcome to the Natural Parents Podcast, where we will cover all things faith, health, family, and wealth through a biblical perspective of putting things in life that matter most back into order. We're reminded in Matthew 6:33, where Jesus said, "But seek first the kingdom of God and all of his righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto you." Join us each week as we focus on what truly matters most in this life and passing those values on to the next generation. This is the Natural Parents Podcast with Ryan and Abbie Hewkin. Life's not fair. If life were fair, we'd all be in big trouble. If your kids are anything like mine, they say all the time, "Dad, that's not fair." And I don't know where they get it from. I'm here to tell you today, don't always give your kids fairness. Teach them that life's not fair.
We always follow up when they're like, "That's not fair. Life's not fair."
Yeah, they know.
They
almost
know,
could say it. What does Dad say?
Life's not fair.
Right.
You just said that the other day.
And again, I think it's one of those things that culture just breeds this ideology that, kids just innately they start with this inborn aspect of justness and fairness. And well, that doesn't seem to add up. So they're always assessing for that. And I think it's worthy to guide them towards what life's really going to bring their way.
Yeah, and I think that if you always focus on what's fair and what's not fair, it brings out comparison. It brings out being a victim. Of course we want right to be done.
Right.
And we don't want it to always be like, "Oh, well, I'll just take the short end of the stick every single time."
Right.
But you don't want to instill in them to be looking on how they are the victim in this because it's not fair.
Sure.
Or looking at them always comparing, because that doesn't give life to anybody. Or, and no situation is always going to be fair because life is not fair.
Right. It's not. And, thank God for grace and thank God for justice and all these different things that we are promised. Maybe not always in this life, maybe in the next life or whatever, but, it was so manifest in our life because of twins, I think. And the heart pull for us to always make sure they had the same experiences. And that's my goal, is can they have the same experiences? But, it was so interesting. Brinley, of all of our kids at the beginning, I'd say she might be the best about it now at times, as far as just like, well, it's not fair. But maybe it's because we had to get through so much where I remember every time we'd portion out a meal, she'd be looking. Which one's got the most, which one is the fullest, and well, she got more than me, and all these different things. And I'm like, sis, no, she probably didn't. And so we've tried to cultivate different ways and where we're, talking about this with her, but now it's bigger things. It's, well, she's got this, or Bub got more time on that, or whatever it might be. And it's just so hard where they're always seeking fairness, but it's tough being a parent, because we want to give them the same experiences, but life's not fair. So what do we do?
Right. And it is hard, especially with having kids that are very close in age. So obviously we have the twins, but then our son is only 2 years younger, but it feels like they're triplets.
Right.
And they all want the same thing. So if one gets a one-on-one day with grandma, they all want that immediately, but they all want to do the exact same things, which rightfully so. They want to experience it the same way. But it's just so important to make them not compare. But something that's funny that you taught us is, I guess this is what happened in your household. See, I have an older brother, but I feel like I'm an only child,
right,
because I never had to compete or for anything. I was always the only one, it felt like the only one that wanted to hang out with my parents, and I always got my mom to myself and all of that. And so, you had this rule, I guess, growing up with your sisters, that if you had a chocolate bar and you were going to split it, well, one person splits it, the other person chooses what half they get.
Yeah, that's a good equalizer.
Yes, and it has come in handy so many times. There was just like a fruit jerky that the girls found in the pantry. They're like, can we have it? Can we have it? There's only one. And I'm like, yep, you split and you choose which half that you want. And
the precision that comes in that equation, where they're like measuring and making sure that the cut is perfectly
chiseling
even.
off an extra little piece.
It's so amazing to me, but that's what I'm talking about, where kids just innately, they know, no one teaches them. They just say, Dad, that's not fair. And it's like, you're right. In this equation, in this moment right now, it might not be fair. Now, again, there's certain things that we're going to talk fairness and we're going to work through that. But it's just like, life is not fair. Don't damage your children in trying to always create every situation into a fair equation, ultimately is the invitation, right? I say it all the time. And here's the greatest equalizer of ever. We just, on our way to the podcast studio today, I had this conversation with Abbie, right? They're mad, twin sisters. They, as a grand total of, if I count right, 5 bracelets. One has 3, one has 2. And when I talk bracelets, I'm talking about the scrunchy, no hair pull.
Yeah, they're like rubber
type hair ties, basically. And they're fighting over them in the back seat of the van on the way here. And they're splitting it, and Avery's just really distraught. And she says, Dad, that's not fair. She's the one with 3 of them. Her sister had 2. So I'm still to this moment not fully understanding why it wasn't fair, but for some reason she thought she needed 4 and her sister only needed 1. And so they're working through that. And I said, well, Avery, you know what the greatest thing in life that wasn't fair is what happened to Jesus? And she answers, died on a cross. I said, best I can tell, you're not dead on a cross right now. Like, and Jesus, he never did anything wrong. He was perfect. He never said, bad words. He never yelled at his parents. He never did, all these things that sometimes our kiddos do. And it's like, kind of almost this light bulb moment for her in her great frustration over hair ties was that, wait a second, you know what, Dad, you're right. Like, I'm not going to win this fight. Dad understands that life's not fair because we have a perfect example of how unfair and unjust that our Savior was that died on a cross for us, right? Like, he lived this perfect life, died a sinner's death, so I didn't have to. And so I think bringing that into vision for our children is the greatest thing you could ever do for them.
Yeah, and just that grace alone is better than fairness, right? And I think that just making sure that our kids aren't sitting there with like a little scoreboard and tallying up, when it was fair and when it wasn't fair and when they got the better half and when their sibling got, I think that if we just teach them and model with grace ourselves when life isn't fair to us, I think that alone can just be huge in modeling that for them.
Right. And it's not easy because that's my own nature is to do that. How much time did I get doing this thing, or was I treated fairly in this business exchange, or, all these different things? It's just not always that way. And so we desire that in our heart and our children. It's only natural for them to do it as well. But with a grace-filled heart, how can we have that conversation with our kids just gently, not just in the moments of you're mad, you're arguing, you're yelling at me and telling me it's not fair, and I'm going to yell back and say life's not fair. Like, how do we actually reveal to them in tangible ways that they, can understand that sometimes fair isn't actually even what you want.
Right, because if we were truthful, fair would be, let's look around the world. We were talking about this the other night, I think, at dinner.
It's painful.
And we were just talking about the way that other people live. I don't remember what brought it up. Close.
One of the kids said something along the lines of how they had done the laundry or something, but like, you do the laundry. That was the exchange.
Yes, something like, or maybe they had just put on a new shirt and I said, and they were going to change into jammies. And I said, oh, that shirt's not dirty. And they're like, yeah, it is. I wore it for a few minutes. And I'm like, did you know there's people that have never washed their clothes? Like, ever.
Right.
And we talked about, just how people don't have bed sheets. Some people don't even have beds. They don't even have floors to clean, different things. So it's like, really, if we want to talk about fair, let's talk about that way. But I feel like in a moment when your kids are really focusing on comparison and equal and fair and all of that, just like, let's take a break and let's talk about what we're grateful for. We always say, give me 3 things you're grateful for.
Right.
And just really being able to pause them and let's actually look and see what we do have to be grateful for instead of focusing on lack and what we don't have and scarcity, and just really changing that focus for them. Hey guys, we want you to come hang out with us this summer at the Natural Parents Expo.
It's going to be July 26th in Chesterfield, Missouri. Get your tickets at thenaturalparents.com. The stage is set. The venue's booked. All we need is for you to grab your tickets and join us at the Natural Parents Company Expo on July 26th at Logan University.
If you're like most families, you're tired, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And so this event is for you and for us and for the community that is going to be here at the Natural Parents Expo.
See you soon. Well, lack and scarcity, they get talked about a lot in, these different things I listen to on business and entrepreneurship and all this stuff. But lack and scarcity is really actually the original sin, right? And so God made man, Adam and Eve, put them both in the garden and said, you can have everything in the garden, lest that one tree. And Satan came in and said, did God really say, right? And so now he, the father of lies, is speaking lies because God... He said the whole thing is, did God really say you couldn't eat from any tree in the garden? It's like, no, that's not at all what God said. He just said out of his sovereignty, out of his knowledge, out of his grace, his mercy, his justness, said, I know better than you, creation of mine, don't eat from this tree. It'll be bad for you. What do? Don't touch the red button. Bam! Big red button, right? It's just like, we have to have it. And so our children, in the same way, in the same light, get into this mindset by the nature of this world to thinking like, well, what don't I have? Mm-hmm. That's what fairness is really what they're seeking is, well, she's got one that I wanted to have, so it's not fair that she got it and I don't. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, that might be true. But God in his sovereignty and knowing, he gave this person, right? Like we talk about Matthew, the parable of the talents all the time, is like he gave 1 5, 1 2, and 1 1 talents, right, mm-hmm. to do with. And so God bestows these blessings on us. It's our job, especially as Americans with children living in this country where we are so abundantly and beyond blessed to have all that we have, is to point their focus on what they do have and how they can get a return for God's glory on it, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're right, like sitting there talking, we have 2 washing machines in our house. There's places in the world where you might have a person as an adult has never seen a washing machine, right? And it's like we want this aspect of fair, but we don't even realize how great we have it mm-hmm. because we're focusing on the lack that we don't have. And right. So in my opinion, when we ask for fairness as adults or as children, what we're really focusing on is the thing that Satan would have us focus on, is what we don't have, not what God gave us and all the blessings that we do have. So it's physiologically impossible for our brains to be in gratitude and gratefulness, like you're talking about, and scarcity and lack at the same time. That's always brought forth, in my opinion. I see it all the time, at least in these business, entrepreneurship conversations. But this is life. Like original sin was a sin of lack, was a sin of scarcity, because the King James Version of the Bible says the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life are what this world has to offer. And when our kids are seeking fairness, those are the 3 things that they're seeking and looking for. It's really what's out there that I don't have, or what's out there that they have and I don't have, instead of, man, look at all that God has blessed me with. Mm-hmm. How fortunate am I?
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember the quote I was reading to you from a book that I have. I can't remember it word for word, but basically when you complain and when you focus on lack and what you don't have, you're a crap magnet.
Oh yeah.
I don't know the exact words, but
that's fine.
I think it was Taylor that said it.
Oh.
Taylor Welch.
Okay.
But it is so true whenever you do that, and yep. And it attracts that to your life, and so it really is just so important for also us to make right. sure that we aren't complaining and aren't focusing on what we don't have. And I know we've talked about this before. We tell our kids every single day. I don't know. We heard it every day for 4 years, and it didn't take till we were in adulthood and parents to actually reflect on that and be like, how profound.
That's so good.
But every day in high school at the beginning, and it said, make it a great day or not. The choice is yours. And right. we tell our kids that. And I know it has not sunk in yet because it didn't for us until we really needed it. But it is your choice. You get to focus on what you want, and it can either be good or it can be bad. You can either have a good day or you can have a bad day.
Yeah. And for us, anybody listening, parents, you might notice that in yourself, feel a little conviction around, maybe it be covetousness, where we're seeing out there of what somebody has and we don't have it, so we want it, kind of a deal. But also we might recognize some of those patterns in our children where they're seeking and looking for fairness in every equation. So again, I think most simple way that you can start to train this is work it like a muscle. You don't build muscle by just having a gym membership. You got to work out the muscles, right? And so working out that part of the actual science of it is the frontal cortex, the prefrontal cortex that thinks cognitively around the things that we are grateful for. If you can work that, if you can teach your kids to work that, then we can start to take the place of again, if I were to say it, maybe covetousness is really the root of fairness, or the seeking of fairness is desiring things that God gave other people and not us. If we can start to work that mind muscle around, well, let me just be thankful for what God gave me. A really simple practice we do with our kids every day is tell us 3 things that you're grateful for. A mentor of ours said that his mom growing up wouldn't even let him come downstairs unless he'd given her 3 things that he was grateful to God for. And it's just so powerful how those types of things can carry a child through into adulthood and make a huge difference.
Yeah, it really sets them up for success. So, if you want to raise kingdom kids, then we have to stop raising them for a fair world.
Right.
And just really helping them to focus on the good and focus on that God is a just God and there's grace, and that we should be giving that grace as well, just as it's been given to us.
No question. If you guys enjoyed this, hope you loved having the conversation. Join us next week and every Monday for new episodes talking about all things faith, health, family, and wealth with the Natural Parents Podcast.
From the bottom of our hearts, we want to say thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with someone you know and leave a review. By doing so, we're able to grow this community of amazing people just like you and raise a generation of children that know God and do His will on earth. We'll see you next time.
This is the Natural Parents Podcast with Ryan and Abbie Hewkin.